The C-130 Hercules banked sharply over the Nevada desert, its engine straining against winds that seemed to carry secrets. In the cargo bay, 23 passengers sat in olive-drab silence, their faces hidden behind tactical sunglasses and the practiced indifference of military transport. Most were contractors heading to Nellie's Air Force Base for routine exercises. Most were forgettable. The woman in seat 14C was different, though none of them knew it yet. She sat with her hands folded, staring through the small porthole at the endless expanse of desert below. Her flight suit bore no rank insignia, no name tape, no unit patches, just the faded outline where they once existed. The other passengers had tried conversation during the 4-hour flight from Colorado Springs, but her responses came in single syllables, polite but distant. A few of the younger airmen had smirked, whispering about the washed-up has-been, riding in back instead of up front where pilots belonged. Staff Sergeant Morrison, a cocky F-22 crew chief with 3 deployments under his belt, had been particularly vocal. "Look at her," he'd muttered to his buddy. "Probably couldn't handle the new birds. That's why they stuck her on passenger duty." The woman never reacted, never turned, never acknowledged their existence. She just watched the sky with eyes that seemed to calculate distances and angles even at rest. When the aircraft's radio crackled to life, her head tilted slightly, the first sign of interest she'd shown all flight. The pilot's voice came through the intercom, professional but carrying an undertone of confusion. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're receiving an unusual request from Nellie's Tower. They're asking for passenger manifests and specific inquiries about one of our riders." A pause, static. Then, "They want to know if we have a passenger traveling under the designation Ghost." The change was immediate and electric. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward the woman in 14C. Morrison's smirk vanished like smoke. The contractors sat straighter. Even the loadmaster, a grizzled master sergeant who'd seen everything twice, went pale. Because everyone in that cargo bay, everyone who'd ever worn the uniform, who'd ever listened to squadron legends over beers, who'd ever heard the hushed stories passed down through fighter pilot lineages, knew that call sign. Ghost wasn't just a call sign. It was a ghost story, a legend, a name whispered in ready rooms from Langley to Cadena, always prefaced with "I heard," or "someone told me," or "this guy I knew swears." The woman in 14C finally turned from her window. For the first time in 4 hours, she looked at her fellow passengers. Her eyes were calm, ancient, carrying the weight of sky and fire and decisions that had changed the course of wars. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The radio crackled again. "Ghost, if you're listening, Nellie's Tower requests you switch to frequency 251.1 for priority communication." Without hesitation, she reached for her headset. The silence stretched like a held breath. Outside, F-22 Raptors rose from the desert floor in perfect formation, their engines singing harmonics that only a pilot's ear could truly appreciate. They climbed toward the transport in what appeared to be a routine intercept, but something felt different. The angles were wrong, the spacing too respectful, too ceremonial. Morrison found his voice first, though it came out smaller than before. "Ma'am, are you really?" She keyed her mic. "Nellie's Tower, this is Ghost. Copy on 251.1. Been a while since I've heard that frequency." The tower controller's reply came through static and something that might have been reverence. "Ghost, welcome home. We have a situation developing that requires your particular expertise." Through the porthole, the F-22s had spread into an honor formation, not an intercept, an escort. The woman who had been just another faceless passenger was transforming before their eyes. Her posture straightened. Her movements became precise, economical. The years seemed to fall away like shed skin, revealing someone who belonged in cockpits and controlled chaos. "Nellie's Tower, Ghost copies. What's the nature of the situation?" Ma'am, we have an unknown aircraft military configuration operating in restricted airspace. It's not responding to any communications, and its flight pattern suggests, well, it suggests someone who knows our defensive protocols better than they should. The woman's ghost's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition, or maybe memory. Can you describe the aircraft's signature? A pause. Ma'am, that's classified. Tower, this is Ghost. I helped write those classifications. Another pause, longer this time. Then, Ghost, the aircraft is showing characteristics consistent with experimental stealth technology. Technology that was classified beyond our current clearance levels. Ghost closed her eyes, and for a moment she looked every one of her years. When she opened them again, the other passengers saw something that made them understand why legends grew around certain people. Nellie's Tower, I need to speak with Colonel Harris in Air Combat Command. Priority Alpha. Ghost, Colonel Harris is. He's been waiting for your call. The C-130 was descending now, the desert floor rising to meet them. Through the windows, more aircraft appeared, not just F-22s, but F-35s, older F-16s, even what looked like prototype designs that shouldn't have existed. Morrison cleared his throat. Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly did you fly? Ghost looked at him with something that might have been amusement. Everything, Sergeant. I flew everything. The radio crackled one more time. Ghost, this is Harris. Good to hear your voice. Wish I could say the same, Colonel. Brief me. 3 hours ago, an aircraft appeared on our scopes. Stealth signature, advanced maneuvering capabilities, and flight patterns that suggest intimate knowledge of our defensive systems. It's been conducting what appears to be reconnaissance over our most classified facilities. And you can't reach it. Every time we get close, it vanishes. When we back off, it reappears. It's like it's playing with us. Ghost was quiet for a long moment. Then, what's the aircraft configuration? Single-seat fighter, Delta Wing, but Ghost. It's not showing up on any database. The signature is completely unknown. No, Ghost said quietly. It's not unknown. I know exactly what it is. The cargo bay was silent except for the steady drone of engines. Every person aboard was hanging on her words. Colonel, I need immediate access to a fighter, something fast and agile. Ghost, with respect, you've been out of the cockpit for 5 years, 2 months, 16 days. Her voice cut through the static like a blade. But some things you don't forget. Colonel Harris's voice came back subdued. What aircraft do you need? Whatever you've got that can keep up. But Colonel, I need you to understand something. If I'm right about what's out there, your pilots aren't equipped to handle it. And you are. Ghost looked out at the approaching base, at the aircraft rising to meet them, at the sky that had been her home for 23 years of service. I designed it. The words hit the cargo bay like a shockwave. Contractors and crew chiefs and airmen who had spent the flight dismissing her as a washed-up pilot now stared at her with something approaching awe. Morrison spoke for all of them. Ma'am, who are you? Ghost smiled for the first time since takeoff. It wasn't a happy smile. That, Sergeant, is classified. The C-130 touched down at Nellie's with a screech of rubber and the whine of reverse thrust. Through the windows, they could see ground crews scrambling, vehicles racing across the tarmac, and in the distance, a sleek F-22 Raptor being prepped for immediate launch. As the aircraft taxied to a stop, Ghost unbuckled her harness and moved toward the exit. The other passengers made room without being asked, suddenly aware they were in the presence of someone whose story was written in classified ink across the sky. At the cargo door, she paused and looked back at Morrison. Sergeant, when you tell this story, and you will tell this story, remember that legends aren't born. They're forged in moments when the sky demands everything you have to give. The door opened, and Ghost stepped onto the tarmac into blazing Nevada sunlight. Waiting for her was a full bird colonel, two brigadier generals, and a crew chief holding a helmet that gleamed like polished obsidian. The unknown aircraft was still out there, still playing its dangerous game with America's most advanced fighters. But now the game had changed. Ghost was back. Colonel Harris saluted as she approached, an unusual gesture between a sitting officer and a civilian. "Ma'am, your aircraft is ready. We've pulled your old F-22 out of storage and updated the systems." "How long has it been sitting?" "Since your last flight, we kept it maintained just in case." Ghost nodded, understanding the weight of those words. In case the world ended, in case the impossible became necessary, in case Ghost needed to fly again. She took the helmet from the crew chief, a young woman who looked at her with undisguised reverence. "What's your name, airman?" "Rodriguez, ma'am. I've heard stories." "What kind of stories?" Rodriguez glanced at the colonel, who nodded permission. "They say you flew missions that don't exist, that you've been places that aren't on any map, that you've done things," she trailed off. "That I've done things that are classified above your pay grade," Ghost finished gently. "That's probably true, but today, Airman Rodriguez, you're part of the story." The F-22 Raptor sat 30 yards away, its angular surfaces drinking sunlight and throwing back shadows that seemed to move independently. It was a sculpture of controlled violence, every line designed for lethality and survival in equal measure. Ghost walked around the aircraft with the practiced eye of someone who understood that in fighter aviation, trust wasn't earned. It was built into every rivet and wire and system. She ran her hand along the wing edge, checking for imperfections that might exist only in her imagination. "Ma'am," Harris said quietly, "there's something else you should know about the intruder." "Tell me." "It's not just flying our patterns, it's flying your patterns. The reconnaissance route it's following. We pulled the archived mission data. It's identical to one of your classified sorties from 2018. Ghost's hand stopped moving on the wing. "Which sortie?" "Operation Nightfall, the one that doesn't officially exist." For a long moment, the only sound was the distant whine of jet engines and the Nevada wind carrying secrets across the desert. Ghost stared at the F-22, but her mind was elsewhere, flying through memories that were locked behind security classifications and oaths of silence. "Colonel, I need complete radio autonomy once I'm airborne. No oversight, no second-guessing, no interference from command." "Ma'am, you know I can't authorize that kind of operational independence." Ghost turned to face him, and Harris saw something in her eyes that made him step back involuntarily. It was the look of someone who had made decisions in the thin air above enemy territory, who had weighed human lives against mission parameters and found the balance point between duty and survival. "Colonel, what's coming isn't covered in any manual. Your protocols won't help you. Your chain of command won't save you. If I'm right about what's out there, the next few hours will determine whether this base, and everyone on it, survives the day." Harris looked at the assembled personnel, at the aircraft being scrambled across the field, at the sky that seemed suddenly full of threats. "What exactly are we dealing with?" "Something that should never have been built. Something that should never have been tested. Something that I helped create and hoped would never see operational deployment." She turned back to the F-22, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of regret and the steel of determination. "Colonel, 5 years ago I walked away from this life because I thought the monsters we were building were too dangerous to exist. Today, I'm climbing back into this cockpit because one of those monsters is loose, and I'm the only one who knows how to kill it." Ghost pulled on the helmet, and the transformation was complete. She was no longer the quiet passenger from the C-130. She was a weapon system, calibrated for destruction and focused with laser precision on a target only she could identify. The canopy lowered with a hydraulic whisper, sealing her into the cockpit that had been her second home for most of her adult life. Her hands moved over the controls with muscle memory that transcended conscious thought, bringing systems online, checking weapons status, preparing for a confrontation that had been years in the making. Nellie's tower, this is Ghost, requesting immediate takeoff clearance. Ghost, you are cleared for takeoff. Winds are calm, visibility unlimited. Good hunting. The F-22 rolled forward, its engines building to a controlled scream. At the runway threshold, Ghost pushed the throttles to military power, then beyond into afterburner. The aircraft leaped forward like a living thing, its acceleration pressing her back into the ejection seat as the desert floor dropped away beneath her. At 3,000 feet, she leveled off and keyed her radio to the frequency she'd memorized but hoped never to use again. Phoenix, this is Ghost. I know you're listening. I know you're out there. And I know why you came back. The response came immediately, in a voice that sent ice through her veins. Hello, Ghost. I was wondering when they'd call you out of retirement. She knew that voice, had trained with it, flown with it, trusted it with her life on missions that didn't exist in any official record. The voice belonged to someone who should have been dead for 5 years, someone who had died in an aircraft that had supposedly never been built. Phoenix, this ends now. Return to base and we can work this out. Laughter came through the static, cold and familiar and touched with madness. Work it out. Like we worked out Operation Nightfall. Like we worked out the cover-up that followed. Like we worked out the way they tried to bury us both. Ghost's radar showed no contacts, but she knew Phoenix was close. The prototype aircraft had stealth capabilities that exceeded even the F-22's advanced systems. It could be anywhere within a 50-mile radius, invisible to conventional detection methods. Phoenix, innocent people will die if this escalates. That's not who you were. That's not who we were. Innocent? The voice cracked with emotion. Were we innocent when we flew those missions? Were we innocent when we tested weapons that could level cities? Were we innocent when we followed orders that classified us as expendable assets? Ghost banked left, climbing toward the sun, using the oldest fighter pilot trick in the book. Put the sun at your back and your enemies can't see you coming. But Phoenix had taught her that trick. Phoenix, I know what they did to you. I know what they did to both of us. But this isn't the way. Isn't it? The voice was closer now, coming from everywhere and nowhere. They created us to be ghosts, to be legends, to be weapons they could deploy when the impossible became necessary. Well, Ghost, the impossible is here. On her radar, a contact appeared for just a moment, a blip that shouldn't have existed, moving at speeds that pushed the limits of aerodynamic possibility. Then it vanished again, leaving only the echo of its passage. I'm not going to let you hurt innocent people. Innocent people. Phoenix's laughter was bitter. Look around you, Ghost. This entire base is dedicated to creating weapons of war. Every person down there is part of the machine that built us and then tried to throw us away. Ghost rolled inverted, diving toward the desert floor, using the Earth's surface to mask her approach. If Phoenix was using the prototype's advanced sensors, the ground clutter might give her a few seconds of concealment. Phoenix, we swore an oath to defend this country, to protect its people. That oath doesn't expire just because they betrayed us. They didn't just betray us, Ghost. They erased us, made us into classified footnotes, turned our service into something that never officially happened. The radar contact appeared again, this time directly ahead and closing fast. Ghost pulled up hard, the G-forces slamming her down into her seat as she climbed toward a confrontation that had been inevitable since the day she'd walked away from this life. At 12,000 feet, she leveled off and finally saw it, the prototype aircraft that shouldn't have existed, flying in formation just off her starboard wing. It was beautiful and terrible, a synthesis of stealth technology and raw power that represented the pinnacle of classified aerospace development. And sitting in its cockpit, looking at her through a helmet visor that reflected the desert sky, was someone she had once called friend. "Hello, Ghost," Phoenix said over the radio, the voice now crystal clear. "Miss me?" The two aircraft flew wingtip to wingtip, separated by 30 feet and 5 years of secrets. Ghost could see Phoenix clearly now, older, scarred, changed by whatever had happened during the operation that had supposedly killed her. "Phoenix, talk to me. Help me understand." "Understand?" Phoenix's aircraft rolled away, opening distance between them with predatory grace. "You want to understand? Then let me show you what understanding cost me." The prototype aircraft began to climb, its engines producing thrust signatures that defied conventional physics. Ghost followed, pushing her F-22 to match the ascent, but she could feel the gap widening between them. "They told you I died in the test flight, didn't they?" Phoenix's voice came through the static, growing more distant as the prototype climbed beyond the F-22's operational ceiling. "They told you the aircraft broke up during a high-G maneuver, that my body was never recovered." Ghost was at 45,000 feet now, her aircraft approaching its service ceiling, while Phoenix continued to climb into the thin air where only the most advanced aircraft could operate. "Phoenix, come down. We can work through this together." Together, the prototype was at 60,000 feet now, a dark speck against the blue-black sky. "There is no together, Ghost. There's only classified and declassified, only expendable and essential, only alive and officially dead." Ghost reached 50,000 feet and could climb no higher. Her F-22, for all its advanced capabilities, was limited by physics and engineering compromises. The prototype above her had been built with different parameters, designed for operations in the edge of space where conventional aircraft couldn't follow. "Phoenix, I never stopped looking for answers. I never stopped trying to find out what really happened to you." "And what did you find?" Ghost was quiet for a moment, remembering the years of investigations that led nowhere, of questions that were answered with silence, of records that disappeared between one day and the next. "I found walls, classifications, people who suddenly couldn't remember conversations we'd had the day before." "You found the truth, Ghost, that we were never pilots, we were test subjects, assets to be expended when the mission parameters demanded it." The prototype began to descend, diving toward Ghost with a speed that seemed impossible. She banked hard left, feeling the G-forces compress her spine, but Phoenix anticipated the maneuver and adjusted her dive angle to intercept. "Phoenix, don't do this. Don't make me choose between you and innocent lives." "Innocent lives?" Phoenix's aircraft screamed past Ghost's canopy, close enough that she could see the pilot's helmet turn to track her as they passed. "Like the innocent lives in Damascus, like the innocent lives in Kabul, like all the innocent lives we took following orders that didn't officially exist." Ghost rolled inverted and pulled through, trying to get onto Phoenix's tail, but the prototype aircraft's maneuverability exceeded her F-22's capabilities. Every move she made, Phoenix countered with something that should have been aerodynamically impossible. Those were legitimate military targets. Those missions saved American lives. Those missions saved American interests, Ghost. There's a difference. The two aircraft were now engaged in a deadly dance at 30,000 feet, each pilot using skills honed through years of classified training to gain advantage over the other. But Ghost was beginning to realize that she was outmatched. The prototype aircraft represented 5 years of additional development beyond anything in the current inventory. "Phoenix, if you won't stand down, then tell me what you want. What will it take to end this?" The response came after a long pause, and when Phoenix spoke, her voice carried the weight of years of anger and betrayal. "I want the truth, Ghost. I want the world to know what they did to us, what they're still doing to pilots like us. And if they don't listen, then I burn it all down, starting with Nellie's." Ghost felt her blood turn to ice. Below them, the air base spread across the desert like a small city, home to thousands of airmen and their families, contractors, and support personnel who had nothing to do with the classified programs that had created Phoenix and herself. Phoenix, there are children down there, families, people who joined the service to serve their country, not to be part of whatever conspiracy you think exists. Think exists? Phoenix's laugh was sharp and bitter. Ghost, I have the files. I have the records they thought they destroyed. I have proof of everything they did to us and everything they're still doing. Then let's expose it together, the right way, through proper channels. Proper channels. The prototype aircraft rolled inverted above Ghost, hanging there like a mechanical predator. I tried proper channels for 5 years. I tried congressional oversight, inspector generals, whistleblower protections. Do you know what happened? Ghost waited, dreading the answer. They declared me dead. Officially, legally dead. My service record was classified and sealed. My family was told I died in a training accident, and when they tried to ask questions, they were told it was a matter of national security. The weight of revelation settled over Ghost like a shroud. She had wondered why Phoenix's death had been classified, why the usual military funeral protocols hadn't been followed, why the incident report had been buried so deep that even her security clearance couldn't access it. Phoenix, I'm sorry. I should have pushed harder, should have asked more questions. You should have, Ghost, but you didn't. You walked away. You retired and disappeared and left me to rot in a classified grave. I didn't know you were alive. But you suspected something was wrong. You felt it, the same way I felt it. The way operations got stranger, more compartmentalized, more divorced from anything resembling normal military protocol. Ghost was quiet for a moment, remembering the final months of her service, the growing sense that she was part of something larger and darker than she understood. The missions that weren't in any official record, the orders that came from agencies that didn't officially exist, the technology that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. Phoenix, what do you want me to do? I want you to remember who you used to be, before you became a legend, before you became a ghost, when you were just a pilot who believed she was serving something greater than herself. The prototype aircraft rolled away, putting distance between them again. Ghost followed, but she could feel the futility of the pursuit. Phoenix had every advantage, better aircraft, better position, and most importantly, nothing left to lose. I remember, Ghost said quietly. I remember believing that what we did mattered, that the sacrifices were worth it. And now, Ghost looked down at the base below, at the aircraft scrambling to intercept them, at the people whose lives hung in the balance of this conversation. Now I don't know what I believe, but I know what I won't do. What's that? I won't let you hurt innocent people in the name of exposing corruption. Phoenix's response came after a long pause, and when she spoke, her voice was sad rather than angry. Then you're going to have to stop me, Ghost, because I'm done being their secret. I'm done being classified. And if the only way to expose the truth is to force them to acknowledge what they created, then that's what I'm going to do. The prototype aircraft began to climb again, this time toward the base itself. Ghost pushed her throttles to maximum power, trying to close the distance, but Phoenix's aircraft continued to outpace her. Phoenix, don't do this, please. I'm sorry, Ghost, but some secrets are too important to keep. Ghost activated her weapons systems, feeling the familiar weight of targeting data flowing through her helmet display. She had never imagined she would be using these systems against someone she had once trusted with her life. Phoenix, I'm painting you with target lock. Stand down immediately. I can't do that, Ghost. Then you're forcing me to shoot down someone I once considered a sister. Phoenix's aircraft was diving toward the base now, picking up speed with each passing second. Ghost followed, her finger moving to the weapon release trigger, her heart breaking with each foot of altitude they lost. Phoenix last chance, break off your attack run. The response came through static and determination. Negative, Ghost, this ends today. Ghost's thumb moved to the trigger. In her peripheral vision, she could see other aircraft converging on their position. F-22s and F-35s launching from Nellies in a desperate attempt to intercept the threat. But they were too far away, climbing through altitudes that Ghost and Phoenix had already crossed. At 5,000 feet above the base, Ghost made her choice. Her thumb pressed down on the trigger, and an AIM-120 AMRAAM missile separated from her aircraft with a burst of rocket exhaust and righteous fire. The missile streaked toward Phoenix's aircraft, its seeker head locked onto the prototype's heat signature. But at the last moment, Phoenix executed a maneuver that should have been impossible. A snap roll combined with a vertical climb that broke the missile's lock and sent it harmlessly into the desert below. Nice try, Ghost, but you taught me that move. Phoenix's aircraft was now in a power dive toward the main runway complex, its speed building past Mach 2. Ghost followed, pushing her F-22 beyond its design limits, feeling the aircraft shudder as it approached structural boundaries. Phoenix, you have 10 seconds before I fire again. And you have 10 seconds to decide whether you're going to kill your friend to protect a system that betrayed both of us. Ghost's thumb moved to the trigger again, but this time she hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, Phoenix's aircraft pulled up from its dive, skimming 20 feet above the runway before climbing back into the sky. No bombs fell, no weapons fired, no one died. "What are you doing?" Ghost demanded. Phoenix's laughter came through the radio, but this time it carried relief instead of bitterness. "I'm giving you a choice, Ghost. Chase me and people die. Let me go, and maybe we both find a way to expose the truth without burning down the world." Ghost looked down at the base, at the people emerging from bunkers and shelters, at the aircraft that had scrambled to defend against a threat that had materialized and vanished like smoke. "Phoenix, where are you going?" "Somewhere they can't classify me. Somewhere the truth can't be buried behind national security classifications." The prototype aircraft was climbing again, heading west toward the setting sun. Ghost followed, but her heart wasn't in the pursuit anymore. She had seen Phoenix's restraint, had witnessed the moment when her friend chose not to become the monster that circumstances had created. "Ghost," Phoenix's voice came through the radio one final time, softer now, touched with the sadness of parting, "take care of yourself. And remember, just because something is classified doesn't mean it's right." The prototype aircraft climbed into the sunset, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to radar, its advanced propulsion system carrying it beyond the range of conventional pursuit. Ghost circled once above the base, then began her descent toward a landing that would mark the end of one story and the beginning of another. As her F-22 touched down on the runway that Phoenix had spared, Ghost realized that legends aren't just about the missions you complete or the enemies you defeat. Sometimes, they're about the choices you make when everything you've believed in proves to be built on lies. She taxied to the ramp where Colonel Harris waited with a team of investigators, security personnel, and officials whose agencies didn't appear on any public organizational chart. They would have questions, demands for explanations, requirements for detailed debriefings about an incident that would itself become classified. But Ghost had answers now. Not all of them, but enough to understand that some secrets were too important to keep, and some truths were too dangerous to ignore. As she shut down the F-22's engines and prepared to face a future that would be shaped by the events of this day, Ghost made a decision that would define the final chapter of her legend. She was going to find Phoenix. She was going to learn the truth about the programs that had created them both. And she was going to expose the system that turned patriots into weapons and then discarded them when they became inconvenient. The sky above Nellies was clear and infinite, painted in shades of gold and crimson by the setting sun. Somewhere in that vast expanse, Phoenix was flying toward a horizon that promised either redemption or destruction. Ghost climbed out of her cockpit and removed her helmet, feeling the desert wind on her face for what might be the last time as an official representative of the system she had served for most of her adult life. Tomorrow, she would be classified again. Her actions would be analyzed, compartmentalized, and filed away behind security classifications that ensured the truth would remain hidden. But tonight, she was still Ghost, still a legend, still a pilot who had seen the edge of the sky and chosen to pull back from the abyss. The legend would continue, passed down through generations of aviators who would hear whispers of the day when two experimental pilots faced each other in the Nevada sky and chose duty over vengeance, truth over destruction. And in ready rooms across the world, young pilots would hear the story and wonder what they would do when faced with the same impossible choice between loyalty and justice, between service and truth, between the legend they were meant to become and the person they chose to remain. Ghost walked across the tarmac toward an uncertain future, leaving behind her the aircraft that had carried her through this final mission. Behind her, the F-22 sat silent and cooling in the desert evening, its systems powering down, its mission complete. But the story was far from over. In classified files and sealed records, in testimony that would never see daylight and investigations that would disappear into bureaucratic black holes, the truth about Ghost and Phoenix would continue to exist, waiting for the day when someone with the courage to ask the right questions would finally demand the right answers. Until that day, they would remain what they had always been. Legends written in classified ink across a sky that belonged to warriors who paid the price for freedom with their silence, their service, and sometimes their souls. The legend of Ghost was complete, but the woman who had worn that call sign was just beginning to understand that some stories are too important to remain classified forever.